Hello, everybody, and welcome to lesson 15 of class. What's logical about spirituality? Well, when you think about it, there's nothing logical about spirituality until you understand the vocabulary and the vernacular that's being used. This way, things become more logical because you understand the words that are being used and more palatable because you understand. It is with this understanding from this point forward that we will start to utilize and understand the vocabulary within spiritual teachings to understand what is being said logically to make sense of it all. Now, if you see me looking down, that's because I have my notes here because I'm going to be going in depth to a couple things. This is not going to be a long class because we're dealing with logic, so I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible. But as always, if you got any value out of this video, go ahead and smash that like button and don't forget to follow me. Getting back into it. Many industries have their own language and vocabulary terms that can be broken down into simple logical terms. Why cannot spirituality be the same way, such as finance or the medical industry, which both have their own terminology and vocabulary when communicating? I mean, in finance, if you don't know what stocks and options are, or a condor spread, or a covered call, you're going to be lost in the sauce. But if you understand other things, such as purchasing a stock or purchasing the right for a stock price, then things become more understandable. If you don't know the difference between cardiac bypass or heart surgery, well, then you're going to be lost in the sauce until you understand the vocabulary. Then things become a little bit more understanding, if that makes sense. It becomes easier. In the military, we call it breaking it down Barney style, right? If you ever seen Barney as a kid, so on and so forth. So we're going to break things down Barney style so that people understand certain things so that they don't take things personally. Now, in the military, we operate off of the Geneva Convention. We're not allowed to act until acted upon physically. So we can't take things personally. So that's why we use our words to do certain things. Now, if you put your hands on us, that is completely different, but that's with the Marine Corps. I don't know how other branches operate, but I do know that we are not supposed to act until acted upon, but we do use our words outside of physical touch. So, according to Dr. Jordan Peterson, all perception is based on motivation. So, if you lack the motivation to understand something, then your perspective will forever be skewed based upon your own perception that lacks understanding. Now, let's unpack that for a second because perception's reality, right? And if you perceive something to be, you won't feel motivated to investigate, to ask questions, so on and so forth, or to ask the main reason why, right? So this is where people who do have that drive, that motivation, get to succeed, and then they get to be put in positions like Dr. Jordan Peterson, or if you ever seen House MD or Castle, so on and so forth, the author TV show, or The Mentalist with Patrick Jane, so on and so forth. There's people out there that didn't go through the normal channels of education, but they still got the education needed to compete with those at a professional level. So let's move forward. Let's talk about the halo effect, which is a cognitive bias or a false fallacy. Cognitive bias and false fallacies are interchangeable to a certain degree. They kind of mean the same thing. It's a way to trick the brain psychologically to get you to do something. So the halo effect is where your brain thinks one thing, but it's actually another. There's actually another meaning, something that might be bad. How do I say this? The halo effect is when something good might actually be bad and something bad might actually be good. So it's topsy-turvy, right? The only reason why something looks good is because it's next to something that's bad, or then vice versa, or I should say flip that around, right? So what does this mean? Well, if you're talking about breakfast or food and stuff like that, yeah, the French toast and all that stuff, it looks amazing and it tastes great. And you know what? It's in a nice place and the person eating it looks extremely healthy, so it must be healthy food until you realize that there's high fructose corn syrup in the syrup and all this other stuff that could cause problems and issues with your body. But because you don't lack the motivation to understand, you don't seek any further knowledge because you're just taking things at face value. And this is why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, if you remember the quote from other lessons. So many people thought that Judas was a prominent apostle apostle of Jesus Christ. However, this was only due to what's known as the halo effect because of whom he surrounded himself with. The same thing happens in everyday life, or such as, for instance, when you see a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer, so on and so forth. If it looks like a duck and dresses like a duck, it must be a duck, right? So if you have a haircut that fits in with them, if you wear the same uniform or the same type of clothes, you shop with where these people shop, you're going to look like the environment in which they normally spend their most time because, well, people are lazy and they take the easy way out. So in order to mask that, they do other things. In the business world, they wear a business suit, or even someone dressed in simple clothing that looks like you. Your brain plays tricks on you all the time, and people who are aware of psychological fallacies take advantage of them consistently, especially in marketing. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, in marketing, we use cognitive biases, right? I mean, and things to trick the brain because it's a psychological endeavor, right? You have to remember that when you're in business, you have to be a gladiator. Now, there's multiple gladiators in the ring, and each business has their own group of gladiators that compete. So you have your board of directors, that's your leaders or your trainers, so on and so forth, and then the people below them that send off their people to combat and fight against competition, right? This is where you have your blue ocean and red ocean strategies. You want to develop the blue ocean strategy so that there's less competition and your company could grow with ease. If you have a red ocean and you're in something that is fully saturated in the area in which you're doing business, you're going to have a lot of competition, meaning you're going to have a lot of conflict. So you're going to need warriors or fighters on your team. If you develop a blue ocean strategy, it's a little less turmoil along the way because nobody's competing in that arena. Now, remember this, and remember it well. Do not fear speech, for silence is an indication that the enemy has won in making you quiet. Do not become a Judas who sold his friend out for mere pieces of silver, which are now green, for your greed will show due to your lack of understanding. Do not live in silence, for silence can sometimes be mistaken as weakness. Now, this is the difference between being kind and being nice. This is why people say, don't take my kindness for weakness, and that's why the meek shall inherit the earth. See, when you're kind, you put boundaries up, but you do them in a subtle way so people can misconstrue you as being a nice guy or a nice person. The kindness part comes into place because, well, kindness is spelled with a K. Not a C. And there's boundaries for a reason, right? Because if you cross those boundaries, then that person becomes different. Just like the Geneva Convention that I mentioned earlier. The moment you break the kinesthetic barrier, meaning touch, or the kinetic barrier, meaning touch, right? Because there's potential energy and kinetic energy. The moment you start acting upon something, it's going to act or react, yes or yes. That's the laws of physics. So this is why the Geneva Convention is so genius, because Marines are sarcastic. We do have wild mouths. We do say things that some people don't understand and that take offense to, and they might want to fight us or entice us or entrap us into fighting using their words. And quite honestly, we don't have the time for it. So if you're serious, then go ahead and put your hands on one and find out how well we are trained. That's little food for thought, right? And this goes for anybody in life, right? I think Will Smith had the song Work of Art, and in there he says, if you touch me, I'm a savage, right? So sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. This is the same methodologies and teachings that we get taught because people are always looking to offend somebody. They're looking for the negative to make fun of or to poke at in order to get a laughter out of it because, well, people normally feel happiness in the pain of others sometimes. Now, this is where sarcasm comes into place because if you're witty, you'll be able to take it and flip it and spin it and throw it back at them. So just know your environment, choose your enemies wisely, and understand where things are going before you get there. So reverse engineer your goals before you start off and set forth to go ahead and chase after them. So I want you to remember this because in another video I talked about using your words. So what I mean by this is Use your words, for it is your sword that is a weapon that was given to you freely along with that beautiful mind of yours. Now, words, if you take the S and bring it to the front, it spells sword, right? But your words can hurt people depending if they're not emotionally inclined or able to understand what's being said, so they get frustrated, i.e., triggered, which comes from the mental health space. It's just another word to describe something, right? So why would they say triggered? Well, people with PTSD that come from combat have the key term triggered attached to them because, well, if you piss them off enough, eventually, because the Second Amendment does exist, people have guns everywhere. So when they get triggered, it makes them want to do something. This is why you have to use your words wisely and make sure you don't say something dumb that's going to trigger somebody into doing something dumb, if that makes sense. The gift of having an enlightened and spiritual tongue is to have the ability to speak to those that people listen to. For their ear will bend for their ear will bend and their voice will travel further than yours when they speak to those who follow them. So what does this mean? If you're trying to get the attention of somebody, think of it like picking up a girl. You walk into a bar or wherever you're at. If you ever seen or heard of Mystery, Eric von Markovich, I had the privilege of meeting him a long time ago when I was a teenager in South Carolina, except he wasn't Mystery the pickup artist. He was Mystery the magician. And I was in the magic community, and it was a fun experience, as I was a part of a group that, well, used to be a part of a group named Psych Club that's based off the movie Fight Club, because one of the first rules is you don't talk about it. So I guess I broke the first rule. But anyways, we'll move forward. But yes, one of the things, if I wanted to talk to the leader of Slight Club, I would talk indirectly to other people to get their attention. And then those people would talk on my behalf to the leader of Slight Club, because sometimes the leader would either look down, or he had a temperament issue when I first met him. He would definitely let people know he was in charge. He was, the boss. He was the leader of the group. He funded the structure and everything else. But over time, he was able to soften. So I think, now he's able to understand the intricacies of life and how complex they can be, especially within adaptive systems. He's very intelligent. So if he does get the chance to see this, Scott Shields. Anyways, stress and suffering are the same thing. When you go to the gym, does your body not suffer to get stronger? Now, here's the thing. In a lot of books, they talk about suffering. Right? So if this is the case, then suffering is a way to become stronger, not just spiritually, but in your life as well. For you will get callous. You will not get calloused, but you will be renewed through your suffering. Now, let's talk about that, right? You'll be renewed through your suffering. When I go to the gym, I get calluses on my hands, but that's because my hands are static. The rest of my body that suffers, this is why you get sore, because of the micro tears of working out in the gym, make you stronger. And you're not upset with those results. But if you suffer in life in other ways to try to make you stronger, or to try to get you to a mindset that changes or alters your personality so that other people can use you for their benefit, well, then you're going to have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And most people are not in that boat, right? In the military, we say something like, oh, you're not going to go. There's not enough boat spaces for you, meaning there's not a position open yet. So we have to wait for a position to open in order for you to come in to fill that position. Now, I went through this when I was going in. I originally I think I was wanting to go into Intel, but I ended up getting logistics option, which was how I ended up as an ammunition tech and got to work with EOD and a bunch of cool guys. But after being in the in-depth program for, I think, 9-10 months, waiting before to leave, I finally snapped and I said, I have to get out of here. I have to go. I can't be in North Carolina no more, etc. And of course, they went with my second option, and that's how I became an ammo tech. There's more to that story, but we could get on with it. Now, isn't it strange that when you go to the gym to get the results that you get from putting the body through torture and suffering, you're actually happy and excited about it? Now, most people, they go to the gym, they lose the weight, they look good, they flaunt it off. Oh my God, my physique, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. But when they wake up in the morning sore, they're like, oh, that was such a great workout. My body hurts so much, etc. But when you're going through other struggles in life, such as financial struggles or personal relationships and things like that, you don't know how to weave. You don't know how to juke, jive, and thrive, as I like to say. Right. And I could juke, jive, and thrive with the best of them. So just hang in there with me. Right. And don't forget, if you're getting any value out of this, go ahead and smash that like button because I have so much more to teach you guys. So this is the conundrum, right? When you go to the gym, you're happy about putting your body through the torture and suffering. But when you go to a different area of life, because everybody has a different area of life that they're weak in, because not everybody is that well rounded. This is why the mental health space talks about finding balance, so on and so forth, because if not, you're going to be acting as though you're riding a roller coaster. So you'll be high, low, instead of flying in between the way Icarus did after he listened to his father. For do not fly too high, for your wings will surely burn. However, if you fly too low, the waters will be cast upon your wings and they will weigh you down and you will crash upon the rocks. And then, of course, you have Odysseus. Do not listen to the sirens, for they will lead you to disaster and you will be casted upon the rocks. The sirens were these beautiful people or creatures that sang music and guided you, so on and so forth. But the thing is, they were guiding you into crashing into rocks, and then they would take advantage of you because they were demons, so on and so forth, etc., or evil spirits, or whatever the case may be in the mythology, the mysticism of it all within Greek methodology. But Odysseus had to deal with this. And of course, we deal with it every single day by the words that we say, because just like singing a song can be mimicking words of affirmation because of the chorus and the things that you're saying out loud, you're also telling yourself that. So why not change that and learn how to take advantage of that technique and then put the words that you want to tell yourself or you wish somebody told you on the speaker or on the radio, and then use that, because the people who you want to speak to will listen to those who follow. So let's say I wanted to have someone speak to me a certain way, or I wanted to be around people like DMX or people back like the drill instructors in the Marine Corps. It's like, what's my name? And he starts screaming, so on and so forth. That's a different persona. It's a different mentality, and it's a different group of people. If you're in a peaceful environment or within the Bible Belt and you start acting like that, they're going to call you a lunatic. They're going to put you into a hospital and they're going to say you're crazy because they've never been exposed to that. So the exposure therapy on top of it is great. So the moment you expose others to what it is that you're actually saying or doing and everything else, and teaching them the intricacies of fighting the psychological warfare that we all battle, this is how you're able to help make them stronger. It's like being a coach at the gym. Right? You may not be great with one thing, but there's always somebody there that's able to help because they're on the lookout and they are looking for the right person to help, if that makes sense. So moving forward, however, when you go through life and you experience torture and suffering, you are not happy that you got to go through it, but you dwell upon it. The bodybuilder does not dwell upon the gym when the championship is upon the horizon. So if there's a war coming, why are you complaining and moaning and grinding and bitching that there's a war coming instead of getting prepared for the war? Why not educate yourself? Why not develop the forms of communication that you're going to need? Because at one point we had something called wind talkers and we didn't even know what the hell they were saying until somebody came in and helped. And then that gave a strategic advantage on the battlefield. Now you have to think about this if you're a military person, because, well, in the future, communication is going to be important, especially with AI, because AI is not used to listening to all the metaphors, melodies, entendres, etc., and then being able to take that complexity and understand, or should I say, pick up what somebody's laying down. Most people don't even understand that terminology because they don't understand what words are being used unless they're playing a game. I'll give you a story. There was somebody that, pretended and said a lot of sweet nothings to me. And I said, are you picking up what I'm laying down? I'm trying to teach you something. I'm trying to educate you. I'm trying to show you that you don't need to go out and buy yourself a gun to protect yourself. I can teach you how to fight with your words and use certain tools and strategies and tactics to defend yourself without ever lifting a finger. Think Bruce Lee, The Art of Fighting Without Fighting, or The Way with No Way. if that makes sense, right? You want to be like water. You want to be adaptable, but you also want to be versatile just in case something happens, right? This is why the meek shall inherit the earth. Dr. Jordan Peterson says you should learn how to become a monster first and then learn how to maintain it. Well, going to the military definitely showed me how to become a monster and kill and do all these other things, but I learned how to control and maintain it to a certain point, right? So you have to understand these things when you're going through it yourself, because some people were never trained or put through that kind of training. So the environments in which you reside, that you may try to test certain boundaries or waters, that's like somebody from North Carolina going to New York City and thinking they could run the street because they used to run Charlotte back at home. I don't think so, sweetheart. New York has been doing this for years. And I'll tell you what, there's a reason why it's called the money capital, right? And last time I checked, money isn't just capital, it's also known as human capital. So if you love money, what color is it? And why do you love it so much? Think about that before you start talking about taking lives or doing things, right? Because people will trade you for a simple piece of paper that means nothing, that's backed by nothing, just to go ahead and get their point across, to put you in a position up on a cross or in front of one, so they could give you a stern, strict warning. So you have to understand these things before you get into trouble of what you're saying and what you're doing, because you're in a different environment, right? And the reason why I say this is because, well, they talk about different dimensions in the spiritual world and all this other stuff. And the person that was saying a lot of sweet nothings to me, I remember I said, "Are you picking up what I'm laying down? Are you picking up what I'm laying down?" And they would pretend, pretend, pretend. So then I had a friend of mine do some investigating. They're like, "Yo, she's a mattress." And I said, "Oh, really? Thanks for telling me that. Don't ever say that again in front of whom we're around." And later on, I whispered to her, I said, "Hey, somebody said you're a mattress. Do you know what that means?" And she got extremely red in the face, and she completely knew what was being picked. She was definitely picking up what I was laying down. And all of a sudden, I got to see her proper tell. I also got to see other tells. This is something, a terminology that's used in poker when gambling, to measure or get what's known as a baseline of people's personality, right? Or their behavior, so on and so forth. It's called a tell, a small thing that they do every single time that they're actually telling the truth or when they're telling a lie. So when you're able to pick up on people's tells, that's called getting a baseline as far as their behaviors. And then you could play from there in the game of poker. Isn't it strange that they call Jesus a fool, but within tarot cards or oracle cards, whatever you want to call them, and you're doing the readings, the fool, which is represented by the Joker within a 52 deck of standardized playing cards, by the way, means new beginnings, which is what Jesus Christ had with the New Testament, because it was a new beginning to a new way of living, right? Because you had the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I'll move to different spiritual teachings in a minute. I'm using this because it's the most widely recognized in the United States, along with a couple other things. But you had the Old Testament and the New Testament, and that was supposed to be a new mindset, a new way of thinking, a new world, as they say, right? Or a whole new world, as they say. But moving forward, it's strange how the spiritual books like the Bible, Quran, Vedas, and Enoch all talk about healing with plants, and they're about close to 2,000 years old, but we still have issues in the health community and things that people don't understand on how to heal. If you've been around for 2,000 years, you mean to tell me you haven't figured something out? You mean to tell me that the smartest people in the world didn't see COVID coming? You mean to tell me that the smartest people in the world don't have a cure to a lot of the issues that we suffer from now? Give me a break. Or as I said to a gentleman named Terry one time, come on, you gotta be kidding me, right? How much proof do you need, right? Or do you need someone to show up in person and slap you in the face and say, hey, this is the evidence, this is everything here, so on and so forth. Do you understand now, right? But it's just funny because some people are very conscientious, as they say. Disc profile, C would be conscientiousness. But those are the analytical people that need every little detail, so on and so forth. In the PACE system, I think they would be the E's. I think, if I remember correctly, the E would correlate to the C in the disc profile. And then you have Myers-Briggs, which just goes in depth into the disc profiles. And then I learned all this from Ty Lopez because he mentioned something called the Hexaco score, which is something completely different, but it's another psychological test because people are always wanting to not just label, but fully understand what it is that they're doing business with, who it is that they're doing business with, what is it that they're thinking, their psychology, how can they speak to them or control them or manipulate or deceive them in a certain light, mission, or manner. And so that's why there's these personality tests, because without understanding a personality test, you won't be able to understand a person. I mean, that's like having a cheat code. Think about it. It's going to tell you exactly how to talk to the person, etc. This, that, and the third, what they're all about. Do you like them now on paper after they took a psychological exam? And, it wasn't just something that they presented in front of you while they were there in person. So after I stated everything above, please ask yourself this question. The stuff above is logical because it's proven with facts or because it's ruled by your own very belief. Now, we talked about a lot: perceptions, reality, spiritual teachings, so on and so forth, how money's not actually backed by anything. And people will use it as a tool in order to elicit fear or to weigh you down with bills and make sure that there's not enough supply for the demand of bills that you have, making life a little bit more complicated to see how you survive in the world, right? So why is it that the stuff above may seem logical to understand now? Is it because of the terminology, the homework, and the research that you've done through these lessons and your mind has been shifted and opened up? Or is it still your own very beliefs that refuse to believe certain things? So you keep questioning, you keep, as they say, keep them guessing. You keep asking that question. You want more, 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 right? So what's true to you, right? Do you believe that things mentioned above could not be, okay, I'm just going to say it, screwed up because there's proof and your beliefs push against it? Or do you believe that they could be fact because there's proof and your beliefs agree with it? I'll say that again. Do you believe the things mentioned above could not be messed up because there's proof and your beliefs push against it, so it's not real, etc., and it pushes against it? Or some of those things could be real, and the only reason why you believe they're real and it's so easy for you is because, well, it goes with your beliefs and it aligns, right? So there's not a lot of conflict. I can become a very scary and complicated, what does it say? I become very scary and complicated when trying to decipher what is real and which is fiction. However, with both fact, belief, and exposure therapy, you can determine what is real for yourself without relying on the words of others to tell you the truth. Now, I use the word I in here because I guess I was speaking in first person, but I got my notes right here, so forgive the tech, so on and so forth, and the typing. I think I was using speech to text when I did this, but it was supposed to say I become, so that when you're reading this or if you're listening to this, if this ever gets put into a book somewhere, you would be saying this to yourself. So I become very scary and complicated when trying to decipher what is real and what is fiction. However, with all of it, I should say, fact, belief, and exposure therapy, you can determine what is real for yourself, right? A lot of people will reside to going somewhere else for information, which is perfectly fine. But until you do your own research, homework, and so on and so forth, and put in the work, you won't be able to decipher what's real and what's fake without the knowledge that comes into this. And then after the exposure therapy that sets in, now you have wisdom. And later on, when you start letting other people know, because each one reach one, teach one. So once you start to teach someone and they're successful, you now have insight because it not only worked with yourself, it worked with somebody else. And these are the three phases. To have knowledge, wisdom, and insight is the greatest gift ever, because then you could see things coming from a mile away and you know how to go ahead and fight against it. Now, after everything we just went over, do you think that spirituality is logical, or that we have a misunderstanding due to the lack of understanding vocabulary and terms that are used within the spiritual community? You know what? I'll leave you with this. In the movie Aladdin, there's a scene where he says, "You're only in trouble if you get caught." If you get caught, or I should say, that's when he hears the guards say his name and he realizes, oh, I'm in trouble, so on and so forth. And it's a funny scene because Aladdin's broke and he's stealing to eat and he doesn't have the funds, but he's trying to do the right thing and follow the rules, just like, well, Job did in the Bible. And he just kept going through all this BS, so on and so forth, trying to do the right thing. But eventually, you know, they're going to break. Now, in one story, one didn't break, and the other one, somebody did break, and they started stealing and doing everything just to survive, right? And that's the story of Aladdin, right? So this is where you have to understand the justifications as to why somebody is doing something. Are they stealing something to survive, or are they stealing or doing something bad because they're just wanting to do something bad? It really comes down to the necessities, or at least the bare necessities of life, as they say, right? When he finds a genie in the Cave of Wonders, if you've ever seen Aladdin, he's able to present himself in a different way, but truly understand what really matters to the woman that he is in love with. Because he came from nothing. He put on a fake facade to look like a prince in order to impress a girl. Now, how many guys become, successful or whatever, drive the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, the Bugattis to impress a girl, to look like Aladdin did in the movie? But what really matters to him and to the woman that he's going to marry is completely different, because that's when the money doesn't matter. It comes down to whom they are. Now, what's interesting about this is that since he is poor, right, this is what matters to him. Relationships, getting to know somebody, etc., not being on a high horse. And if you watch the movie, it's great. But then now a genie is also known as a jinn in other spiritual teachings. Now, that's interesting. So if you can look at that and think of it as reality in one aspect, but not in the other, then you're contradicting yourself always. So if you read some spiritual teachings, they talk about a jinn, but a jinn is also known as a genie. And if you're looking at the movie Aladdin and the genie is a good thing, then why in the other scriptures or whatever are they sometimes a bad thing? So on and so forth, right? Now, getting to my favorite part, because this is lesson 15, the number 15 has different meanings within science and astronomy and tarot cards. In science, phosphorus, me being former military and being an ammo tech, I know about white phosphorus. We do use it for something called a shake and bake routine, not Talladega Nights. So don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby, but you know what I mean. In science, the atomic number for phosphorus is 15, while the simplified version is 6, and that's the number for carbon, one of the most essential and abundant elements in our universe, right? In astronomy, M15 represents the constellation Pegasus. So if you haven't heard of Pegasus or heard me those words come out of my mouth, you know that in Hercules, Odysseus, if you've seen Clash of the Titans or Percy Jackson, a Pegasus is a horse with wings, so on and so forth, etc. In other fields, Pegasus is maybe known as software or things like that, but that's completely different. Within Terra 15, the devil, which represents the materialism world, right, and the need for balance, whereas 6 is the lovers and stands for a relationship to harmony. So I'll say that again. Within tarot, the devil, 15, the number 15, right, represents materialism and the need for balance, whereas the number 6 is the lovers and they stand for relationship to harmony, right? The number 6 in Salim version of 15 specific ties to sacred geometry within the six-sided shape. Hold on, what is this? Yes, within geometry, the six-sided shape, meaning efficiency. So what has 6 sides? I'm pretty sure that's called a hexagon, right? And forgive me for this, but that's also, it looks kind of like a honeycomb or an octagon. I got to understand all the shapes because the pentagon has 5 sides, but that's completely different. However, this is a representation meaning efficiency and unity that also correlates to the Star of David and Metatron's cube based off the star, which is based off the Star of David, or the number 6 representing the 6-pointed star. And if you ever see Metatron's cube, that's one thing. And if you talk about spirituality, at least in Christianity, you have Metatron, which was one of the highest angels. I think it was like a seraphim or something like that. And he was a note taker, so on and so forth. And then, of course, in Transformers, you have Megatron, and that's completely different. So you have to understand exactly what somebody is saying. In 3D space, there is the use of a 6-sided, how do I say this? 6 sides similar to a cube to create the 3rd dimension. So a cube, right? So think of a cube. A cube has 6 sides, but in order to create a 3D world, you need to have 6 sides. It can't just be 4 sides, right? Because you have to have the top, the bottom, the front and back, left and right covered. And where does that leave you, right? So top down, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? So on and so forth. And then you have the left and the right. So now that's your 6 sides, etc., so on and so forth. Now let's not forget about the 5 limbs on the body. And when I say the 5 limbs, people are like, what are you talking about? Well, when I say all 4, 1, I hope you get this. You have arms, you have 2 of those. You have legs, you have 2 of those. And then, of course, you have 1 head, but it contains a brain. So the skull is 1 limb, right? You can move it, so on and so forth. You have your limbs, your arms, your phalanges are your fingers, so on and so forth. But when it comes to understanding the Venturian man and everything else, you have to be able to take apart the body, so on and so forth. And I think it's pretty interesting that most people's perception and perspective in life is only to see something for what it is and not what it can all be or for what it actually is, because most of us are dealing with something that people don't know is inside of us and it's invisible, meaning the mental health space. And because of that, many people aren't able to see the 3D world in the 4D manner that many others that have been enlightened also see it, because of the fact that, well, technology gets in the way, there's glitches in the matrix, as they say, or whatever terminology that they're using these days, right? People never have the motivation to understand, so it's up to people like myself and you who are watching this video right now to help people understand, right? Pay it forward, right? Because, well, as we move towards Christmas, you're going to hear this again from me, but Christmas is the art of paying it forward. And this has been lesson 15. So I hope all this somewhat makes sense. I know it was complex and a little bit all over the place, but hopefully you could put the puzzle pieces together. Or if you ever meet Scott, he has a tattoo of a puzzle on his arm with a hole in the middle. And so hopefully you could ask him, you know, what it's like to put the puzzle pieces together and figure things out. Because at the end of the day, what really matters most is the love that we all wish to seek, that we could find for ourselves so that we could hold it for eternity. This is why pictures matter. This is why words matter. This is why video matters. This is why people should be doing more stuff with their life to protect the children than to drive other people crazy because they're getting a personal delight out of it. But anyways, this has been lesson 15, and I hope you guys are ready for lesson 16. I'm already working on it. I'm super excited. And don't forget to like this video and follow me to go ahead and catch it. Till next time, my friends, take care. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.